All right, Janet, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks. Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here. I appreciate the invite.
I was wondering if you could tell listeners a little bit about you, your business, and how you came to be doing the work that you're doing.
Sure. So my business is called Hammock Way of Life, and I help people manifest dreams faster. And I do that through vision boarding. I named my business the Hammock Way of Life because I want to be in hammocks more often.
Yeah.
That's my dream. And several people have that dream as well. But if your dream is something else, I help people manifest whatever that dream might be. And I work with individuals, couples, and also corporations. So that's what we're about. We train people how to become certified vision board coaches as well. So I have 100 plus vision board coaches from around the world.
Well, there's a lot to dig in there, so I'm really excited to get talking to you.
Great.
What made you start doing this? And by the way, I love the name, the Hammock Way of Life, because I am one of those people who wants more hammock time.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of branding people said, "Oh, you can't name your business that. People are going to think you either sell hammocks or that you're lazy or something like that." And so it's been great. People think of hammocks when they see me now, and it's been a great branding name for a business. So I'm really happy that I stuck to my guns around that, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I was working with entrepreneurs. I've worked with startups my whole life, and they kind of said, "When are you going to jump off and do your own thing?" And what would it be? And I kept saying, I just want to be in a hammock at this phase of my life. And so finally, I did jump off just before the pandemic, and still doing business advising. And I always start with vision boarding. I always start because I work with a lot of creative entrepreneurs, and they really want to see the big picture of their businesses. And then during the pandemic, some of them went back to work in large companies, maybe closed their businesses or pivoted in some way. And so that's how I started getting into these larger companies because they were working in divisions of the companies and then worked in other departments and with executive leaders and all of that. And it's just grown into something that I couldn't manage on my own anymore. So that's when I started inviting other people to do what I do. And my biggest competition is people that do vision boarding in sort of a different way. We really have
Right.
brought a lot of tools to the table that make our program different.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that because I think, the audience of people here listening is probably a group of high achieving, very analytical women. And so I can imagine as they hear the words like manifest, vision board, sometimes that causes people's eyes to roll. And so
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
curious when you encounter those people because obviously you go into corporate spaces too.
Yeah.
What do you say to those skeptical people who think
Yeah.
vision boards are fluffy and woo-woo
Yeah.
nonsense?
Yeah. I say it when science meets woo. We've brought in lots of tools like quantum physics and neuroscience and business models, and we can do the woo. We bring in,
Mm,
uh, you know, um, improv and sound healing and all the other stuff, right? But it's a broad range of if they want the science, we bring it in. If we want the woo, I love skeptics. I love it when people come in, and I'll give you a couple examples of
yeah.
people that have come in. One executive leader came in and said, "Oh, what do we have a lot in common with my kindergartner? Because of the glue sticks and scissors." And at the end, he put his phone down and said, "This is the only contemplative time that I've had, other than the 8 minutes that I bring my daughter to school." And I put my phone down and really focused on our goals. And he became our biggest advocate, brought it to every division in the company, and uh, and we had a brother sister team recently. The brothers came in like this. The sisters were all about it, and the brothers at the end were like, "I want to share this with my family and my wife," and it was great. And then an individual client that I worked with kept coming upon a vision. She was transitioning careers and wanted a certain kind of look to her office space. And she couldn't find it in these magazines, but she had it in her head. She had to have this kind of office. So she finally put this picture on the board skeptically. And she ended up getting her dream job for the dream salary. And the office just happened to look like the picture that she put on the board. So sometimes, no matter how much you resist and all that, if you let go of that idea that it has to be a certain way, it manifests different ways. And so teaching people that, like I said, is a dream. I say I'm guided by goosebumps now when those things happen because it's powerful and I've seen it work over and over again.
I love so much of what you just shared, especially the skeptical part. I also do a lot of work with skeptical people who, don't buy into the fact that we have to take care of ourselves as human beings because of course we do, but they haven't learned how. And so, you mentioned science and a little bit of neuroscience. I guess what is the science that's behind the process that you do?
Yeah, it sort of says that you have to be aligned and ready for whatever it is that comes next. And so I think when people are skeptical, they're in that negative space where they can't meet whatever it is. Of course, you're not going to meet it. When I hear the skeptics, I'm like, yep, you're not going to meet it probably because you're not aligned. You're not thinking positively. You're not thinking it's already here. I'm about to get it. It's in that negative headspace. So it's a matter of getting them out of that space long enough so that they can meet whatever it is that the possibility is that they desire.
Yeah, I think that's such an important distinction is, the words that we use create the reality of our lives and, what is possible for us. And I think people can um, get lost in toxic positivity, obviously, but I don't think that's what you're talking about here. I think it sounds like what you're discussing is the possibility of what's out there for us. And I really liked something that you said on a different podcast I listened to of yours, which you sort of mentioned a minute ago, which was to get out of the way or lose the attachment to the whatever the process is going to be. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I think people are attached to outcomes and they don't always happen in the way that you think they might happen. So, well, when you say you want to be rich or wealthy, what do you really want? Like, do you want money? Money is paper. And so it's just a pile of paper, right?
Right.
Or, however it comes. But it's the abundance that it gives you, the joy that it gives you, the feeling that it gives you that I think people are really all about, right? That hammock time or whatever it
Yeah.
is that their dream is. That's really what the dream is, not the piece of paper that's called money. Money will get you there, but it's not the end result. So I think it's just getting people aligned with what their true real vision is in this process. So, and 98% of people die with unfulfilled dreams, according to the Wealth Advisory Group. And so how can we flip that script and get people to think positively and help fulfill those dreams? That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think that work is so aligned with what I do. I
Mhm.
work with a lot of people in healthcare and high achieving people. And a lot of times, just like you said, we're thinking about what we want to get or do or the title, or, in the case of that office, we're thinking about it. But obviously, the office means so much more. What does the
Mhm.
life I'm able to have look like? And so, a lot of people can think that vision boarding looks like, Pinterest looking nice or a poster board and these crafts that you're talking
Yep.
about. But what does your process actually look like for getting people toward more of these deep things?
Yeah. Other than that, it's basically getting them to feel into it. I really want them not to just put on a bunch of pictures on a board and look at them once in a while. I really help them feel what it feels like to already have it here, so that the universe kind of says, "Oh, it's here. Well, let's keep giving it more." So to have gratitude around that, to celebrate the wins, and to take action. I think people look at the board and they think, "Oh, that's the end of it." And it doesn't have to be big action. It can be very small action, like make one phone call, send one email. If it's fitness or health, go for a walk, right? If it's buying a car, go test drive a car. If it's buying a house, go to a grand opening at a house, an open house. And so little things can lead to big results. But I think sometimes people's dreams seem so overwhelming to them, are so far from where they want to get, that they don't dream, they don't feel, and they don't take action.
Yeah, I think that's so true that a lot of times we don't, like that person you were talking about, we don't have space. We don't create space to contemplate, to dream these dreams. And so I think that's, part of why what you're doing is so valuable is obviously carving out that space for people who wouldn't necessarily give it to themselves. And
Yeah,
then I love that action piece because I think that's where a lot of us get hung up. We dream and we put things up there and we say, okay, universe, I'm ready.
right.
And then it doesn't come.
That's
So,
it. Yeah, talk with a
um,
travel agent or start learning a new language if you want to go to a new country and find out what they're interested. You just never know where those little steps might lead, right? And if you're aligned with those smaller steps, bigger things happen.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, not getting too focused on exactly what the thing is. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be, I'm going to go to this place by this specific time and this specific way, because uh, I don't know about you, but when I've done that for myself, the universe is like, haha, that's not the plan. There are
Exactly.
side trips and other things that we get put off on. And a lot of times, once you declare and then start taking action in a certain way, the thing that comes to you is actually way bigger than the thing that you may have imagined for yourself. At least that's been
Absolutely.
my
Yeah,
experience.
absolutely. I don't know if you heard this on one of the podcasts. I tell this story this just because it's so funny to me. I used to put a picture of a Buddha in the middle of my board. To me, that meant slow down, do yoga, meditate more. And I ended up at the largest Buddha temple in China. I was working for a chamber of commerce that sent me to China. And so
Wow.
like, you never know where things are going to end up. And so, yeah, be careful what you wish for is one of my biggest cautions in doing this work.
Yeah, I did. I didn't hear that story, but I did hear you share on a different podcast to be careful about the things that you put on your
Mhm.
board as possibly having, these alternate,
Yeah.
definitions and alternate ways of coming out. So I wonder if you could
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Double meaning is what we look at. I look at everyone's board after they work with me and make sure that nothing has double meaning. Some of the things that I see are nailed it,
Mm,
crushed it. That could manifest very differently, or a family affair. So I want people to really understand what they're putting on there, and even just negative things like no debt. The debt word could stand out, right? So instead of no debt, you could say this much money in the bank and be specific about the amounts that you put in, right? Do you want a certain number of whatever it is, and
yeah.
make sure that number is on there so that it's aligned with a goal.
Yeah, I think in listening to you talk there and listening to you talk in other venues, you describe how a lot of people have been really successful with what they
Mhm.
put on their vision boards because they've been so specific. So what has that looked like?
Oh, so many things. People have manifested how, second homes and a specific dollar amount, children, and things differently. Sometimes what happens is that it manifests differently than the original thought. And I tell this story with the permission of my client, one of my early clients who was single at the time and just kept going on bad dates. And so she did a vision board. She had a picture of one woman's hand holding champagne glasses. And I said, what is this all about? And she said, well, I see myself with, someone in Champagne. And I said, yeah, but it's one person's hand. And she partied a lot that summer with her girlfriends. And so we redid the board, we repurposed it. And she met her husband. I went to their wedding. And then at the time, she also said that she wanted a baby, but she was also starting a business.
Mm,
And it turned out she was an only child. And so she didn't want really the a baby. She wanted a family. And her husband now has a huge family, extended family. And that really what that brought her joy, just having the family. So even though she thought she wanted the baby, she really wanted the family, right? And the family came
right.
through her husband. So I do think even when you think you want something, it manifests very differently in the end.
Yeah, I think that's the part about thinking about how we want to feel or what it is that we want from that thing that we're trying to manifest rather than the just thinking about the thing itself, because otherwise we get stuck or, we get so fixated on something that often the universe is giving us signs toward something else.
Yeah.
But we miss them because we
Yeah.
are doggedly pursuing something. And then we get to
Absolutely.
that point and we're like, what now?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, signs. I actually get literal signs when I get signs, but yeah, I think people don't pay attention to signs enough. Whatever your sign is, it is so important to pay attention to. I mean, now, hammocks are what I look for. If I'm in an environment with hammocks, I'm like, I'm probably in the right spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of the beauty of the science of this too is, from a neuroscience perspective, by putting things out on a board or saying things out loud or say actually admitting what is important to you, you're telling the world and the universe, but also your brain, hey, these things
Absolutely.
are important. So for
Mhm.
you, it's hammock, hammock, hammock. And for
Right.
me, I notice bodies of water or my dad passed away a year and a half ago, but he loved birds. And so
Yeah.
whenever I see certain birds that he liked or
Yeah.
things that remind me of him, I'm like, oh, dad, this nice memory. And I think my brain notices that. And some people are like, oh, I didn't see that at all.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you don't- yeah, that's a great analogy. And this weekend that happened. Last weekend I went for a walk at a track that I go to, and May is when my father passed in 2008, and Buttercup was what he called me. He called me Buttercup, and so I see buttercups sometimes when I feel like he's around me or whatever. And so they usually come out in May. The year
Hmm.
he died, I saw a huge field of them. And so at this track where I go, I usually see buttercups. And last weekend I went, and I don't know what it was about my visual perspective, but I didn't see them. They're usually up against the fence, and I walked around and I was like, oh, I don't see the buttercups. And so last weekend I went and I looked a little farther out,
Hmm.
and they were near the trees this year for some reason, and they were thriving. They were taller, and I thought, wow. And again, I look for signs. So what am I missing by looking at things too closely? I need to expand my vision wider as well. So that's the messaging I feel like I need to pay attention to this week.
Love that. Both because you're, embodying and doing the work alongside of everybody,
Yep.
not
Yep. Look the
not
walk.
positioning yourself as that you're an expert, obviously, because of all you've done. But I think that's what most of us are trying to say who do some version of this work is like,
Yeah.
I'm on the path with you. I also
Yes.
need these things. I
Yes.
certainly teach the things that I need to learn.
Mhm.
And, being able to broaden your perspective and widen your vision. What if you're dealing with somebody, like a person who's might be listening to
Yep.
this show who is burnt out or feel like they don't have any time for themselves and they don't have access to one of these things? How do they get started with thinking about what that might look like in their own life?
Yeah, I'm someone who has suffered from burnout, so I get it. And,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to schedule time for yourself. You have to set boundaries, and I've started to set boundaries for myself. So in the morning, I want to exercise, I want to meditate, I want to eat right, and then I do the same at noontime, right, or lunchtime, right? So I,
Mm-hmm.
I also need to move. I'm on Zoom a lot. I work from home, and I'm on Zoom a lot, and I want to be able to move. So I schedule myself in now. And I think that's so important. And people sometimes don't like it. They try to squeeze into that time. If they find out that I'm doing that, they're like, "Can I meet you here earlier or later in the day? And can I, take that lunchtime and all of that?" But I have to treat myself like a client sometimes and just set those boundaries. And it's made an impact and a difference by doing that.
I think that's such an important thing. And I also, hear a lot of response to that, which is, I couldn't possibly do that because I think the discomfort of that other person thinking a thing about me,
Right.
is something that it takes time to get over. Or
Yeah.
maybe you don't get over it, but you just decide, like you're saying, that your priority of yourself
Yeah.
matches as much as that person's opinion or more, probably
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's your life and your well-being.
Yeah, and like you said, sort of modeling that behavior for my clients is important. So I'm taking the whole month of July off because I'm an introvert and I need
Mm.
creative time, and I want to not only plan my business for the next year. I also have some creative projects that I put on hold for a while, and so I know that I need that downtime to create. And I have these great ideas in my head that I've not been able to get to, and I know that if I keep doing that, it's not going to be good for me overall. So I really want to show that. And so when I end up getting a book on a Times Square billboard, or finish projects, I can show people how it's done, how I did it.
Yeah, I think that really lands for me. That's been something I've been thinking about also as an introvert in an extroverted type role
Yes, yes,
is how do I do things for myself and how do I quiet all the other noise and voices and give space? Because I'm sure people ask you too, how do you generate so much? You have 100 coaches that you've trained
right,
and you've had
right.
this business. And I think you just gave us part of the answer, which is A, I have boundaries while I'm doing it, but
Yeah,
then also it's amazing that you carved out an entire July where you're going to do things.
yeah.
What are you going to do for yourself?
I'm writing a second song. I have a song that's on Spotify called "Smell the Rain" with Jay Real and Bob Frederick, and I'm doing a second song. It's in the works, and I'm writing a screenplay. So those are the two creative projects, and then I have some really great workshops coming up in my business that one of them is Energize Your Vision,
Mm,
and it's for people that have vision boards, and our coaches are going to come in and give people connections, ideas, feedback on how to move those visions forward. And then the second one is a workshop on visioning for the visually impaired. And so we're going to do a global workshop on that, which again needs some planning. So those are the projects I'll be working on in July.
That's exciting. Not down completely.
Yeah. Oh, and getting my book into airport bookstores and retail shops. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great segue. Talk a little bit about your book.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a memoir I wrote during the pandemic. I wrote sort of funny stories from my life. I have a lot of funny things that have happened over time. And then a friend of mine said, you should relate it to business. You work with startups. It could be, a lot of the lessons that you're teaching around fear and moving forward and going with the flow are all great business lessons. And so I did that and then found a publisher and she said, why don't we make this a journal too? That could be so people really be reflective around business and their own goals and manifestations that they want to achieve. So that's what we did. It's a combination of my stories with business and journal. And it's a great vacation read. I wanted it to be simple. A lot of times when I'm reading, I want to read quickly a chapter, put it down, come back to it. And so if I have to read a long chapter and I never know when the break is coming,
Hmm.
I wanted to make short chapters that people could be reflective about, and it's helpful. A lot of people that aren't reading are suddenly reading my book, which I love. That to me is special.
What a great compliment. I'll have to see if my husband will be open to that as a person who neither
That's funny.
reads nor creates contemplative
Yeah, I
space
know.
for
It's
himself.
funny. Yeah, I love all the people that are reading the book and sharing it with their clients too, who might be, anti-reader. So,
Do you
yeah.
have a favorite story from the book or one that stands
Yeah,
out for
I
you?
do actually. I have a couple. Do you want to hear
Yeah.
my two favorite ones? So the
Hmm.
two favorite ones are one is in college, I had one course left to take. I started out as a business major and then I ended up as an English major. And I had just one course left to take. I had taken I required all my fulfillments, for college. And so I looked at music theory, which was complicated. I only, know how to play chopsticks on the piano. So that's not good. Wine tasting looked good, except we had to memorize all the regions in most of the world. And so I was like, that seems like a lot of memorization. So I landed on a three-dimensional design class. And so I went to the class almost toward the end of the semester, and we were given a 2x4 that we had to create a box out of. We had to create a box with a 2x4, not using nails. So we had to find an adhesive for the box and create this, whatever it was, the box.
Hmm.
So I went into the shop and I made a box, had four sides, a lid that fit perfectly. I was so happy with my little square box with the lid on it, with the adhesive that I used, which I don't know what it was, super glue or something. And so you had to bring it under wraps in the class. And so everybody's under a towel or a sheet or something like that. And so I put it underneath the sheet. And then the first person that got up unveiled theirs, and it was like the Eiffel Tower. It lit up, it had drawers that came out. It was spectacular. Okay. So the person comes out and theirs lights up, and I'm overwhelmed with how beautiful this their box is. So I get up to show mine. I'm already humiliated because of my little box compared to this studio art major who's probably been there the whole 4 you know years of college. So I get up and I go to put my box on the table. It nicks the table and it falls apart. So not only do I have this four-sided box that doesn't look that great, now I have a crinkle box. I'm trying to hold it together. I talked about the box. I put it back under the thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna fail college. I had needed 3 credits, and this is it, right? So I
Hmm.
go home. This is pre-internet. I had to wait for my grades in the mail. I get my grades, and the professor gave me an A plus. I could not believe it. So I went to talk to him and I said, this must be someone else's grade. Obviously, my box was not the best box. And he said, it takes vulnerability to be an artist. You didn't run out of the room crying. You stood there and talked about it. It wasn't the best, but you understand what it takes to be a great artist. And he said, now get the heck out of here before I fail you. So that was one story
I
about
love
just,
that.
being persistent and not, caring what other people think. I mean, there were Snickers that obviously it wasn't the best thing, but I hung in there and I think that mattered in that moment. So, um, the other story is a third grade teacher who his thing was he came in with a paper bag and he said to a group of 8-year-old third graders that we had to eat what it would, whatever was in the bag. And so he started naming all these things that it possibly could be. First, he said it could be bugs, and a bunch of us sat down. I stayed
Hmm.
standing, but a bunch of my classmates sat down. And then he said it could be grow like moldy cheese or liver. I just didn't think he would make us eat something that might make us sick. So I stayed standing. I stayed standing until it was just myself and this other guy, a guy that had been bullied in school. It just came down to the two of us, and the teacher kind of looked over at me like, "Stay in there, kid." And I, at the moment he did this, I just couldn't stay in. He slammed the bag on the table, and it made a really loud sound. And in my head, I couldn't think of anything that could be in the bag that wouldn't choke me. I thought it might be a ruler. I thought it could be a rock. For some reason, the loud sound made me sit down. And what happened was he pulled the thing out of the bag, and it was the biggest, most beautiful lollipop that I had ever seen in my whole life. It was big and colorful and round. And Paul Comperoni got the but got to keep the lollipop. And that one was about fear. We are stopped by fear, right? From leaving a job because we can't afford health insurance, or we are just afraid that we can, might fail. And so I relate that particular story in the book to business and why people don't leave jobs that they feel stuck in.
Yeah, I think, in that one particularly, there are a lot of different ways that our fear can get in our way and keep us back from things. And, just thinking about what we started about talking about with vision boarding and manifesting, how do you see fear come up for people as they make their boards?
Yeah, I think sometimes people are afraid of their own success, right? That it's just too much for them to think about. What if I get everything I want? Will I still have dreams? Or,
Hmm.
what's my next dream? And so I see people being just afraid of um their own dreams, and what happens when they do get there, and or not being able to see the possibilities, see the steps that they could take to get there. Like, it just is such a big leap that they can't see the smaller steps. So I think it's helping them see the smaller steps and get out of their own way to go above it, around it. I sometimes, when I'm working with artists, when they paint something, I have them look at it close up, far away, on the ceiling, on the floor, rip it up, whatever it is. Just a
Hmm.
different perspective sometimes shifts everything. And it can be small. It doesn't have to be huge.
Yeah, those little steps that you mentioned, how do you shrink yourself from, okay, this is what I really want my life to look like. This is a dream life. How do you make those little steps?
Yeah, I think you just see what perspective again, and I don't think it's always a straight path. I think you can go above it or around it, or small, you know, you can turn around, and there's so many different ways that you can look at things from a different perspective. That's what I have people do. I have them take just a different turn. We might go to I might have them go to a different coffee shop, or just do something different out of their routine. People get in routines and patterns that keep them stuck. And so getting out of those routines and patterns is important.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people's little light bulbs just went on when you said routines and patterns, because can imagine whether you're, a successful creative entrepreneur, or you in a different type of business, or you have a different professional job, you have been doing things one way in order to get to the place that you're at right now. And I think a lot of the work that you do and that I do is asking people to consider doing something differently, which is obviously where that fear comes up for them. That seems terrifying.
Yeah.
But, reminding them also that they're not the only ones doing those things. I can imagine doing vision boards in a group can be really powerful for that reason too. You see other people
Yeah.
also willing to take a shot on themselves. So maybe you are
Yeah,
also.
yeah, the group is yeah, always very powerful. In fact, we've worked with some groups where people didn't know they worked in silos, right? A lot of us work in silos, right? And
Yep.
so you don't get to see your coworkers anymore, or you're working on a project and you don't understand how the other person relates to your project. And so it was a group of teachers who uh, were brought together. They usually only came together at a staff meeting at the end of a long work day with a bunch of kids, and so they didn't really know each other personally. And so they started working on these vision boards and realized that several of them loved gardening and really wanted to teach the kids how to garden and how to compost. Their school happened to be in a food desert. And so it was so powerful to see them all. There were 4 or 5 in the same group that said, "Oh, I've always thought that space could be used for this too." And so they ended up creating a community garden out of it. And so that was beautiful. I've had other people come in who are musicians, didn't know that other people were musical in the group and came together as a band. And so lots of other, when you come together as community, you can really create bigger dreams.
Yeah, it's amazing what can happen when you're willing to, say the thing that you really mean or that you really are lit up by, because so many of us keep ourselves from that, or we think life is supposed to be one way. I got myself into trouble because I made my life all about medicine. So uh,
Okay. Right, right. Yeah.
that's how I burnt out, is because I didn't do other things. And so any low stakes way, it's pretty low stakes to put things on a board, right? Like
Yeah.
no one's going to come and audit you or fail you in a class, which sounds terrifying. By the way, I may have run out of
Right,
the room.
right. Right, right. Yeah, and wellness is such an important, piece of this. And in fact, the next iteration of my company is to, there's usually 5 or 6 dreams that people have, and they usually are around health and wellness, fitness, travel, business, family, which I think love, right? Those sorts of
Mhm.
things. And so we're probably going to have different divisions where people are just focused on health and wellness. And so and you can be held accountable there, right? That people can start to hold each other accountable for saying that you're going to exercise or eat right or something like that. So any sort of thing, the accountability piece becomes an important part of this process.
Yeah, I think that's such a great call out, that our lives are multifaceted. And I can imagine, as people hear you talking about that, sort of is the same thing that my clients have when I give them a wheel of life. It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, there's so many directions that I could go. How do you help them with that as they're making a board? Do they focus on just one area, or, overall?
That's a great question. So I tell people they can either do an overall whole, wellness board, or they can break it down into pieces. It especially is helpful when I'm working with entrepreneurs who have multiple ideas. Well, I find that a lot, that, shiny object syndrome comes of like, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. So I say, let's do it all. Let's create 5 vision boards and see which one really resonates with you. And so that's how I break it down a little bit. So it can be for anything, but businesses are, like I said, my primary wheelhouse. So we tend to focus on that one that really lights them up. I have them talk about it, and then I can tell by that process which one probably they should pursue first in that process.
I think that's such a great benefit of working with, you as someone who's teaching and facilitating, or a coach, is, a lot of times you've learned to tune out those signals to yourself that are the, ooh, this one looks good, or, this is the one that lights me up. And sometimes when we're with other people, they're like, I can feel that your energy is different,
Yeah,
and then I think, especially my group of people, they are learning still that they have feelings and excitement, and
yeah,
they have totally suppressed those parts of themselves for years, because they have been doing things either because they were told they
mhm.
were good at it, they were lit up by it at one point, but they aren't anymore, or unfortunately some of them are doing it because other people want them to do it.
Exactly right. Yeah, yeah. I tell people never start a business when someone else wants you to start it. I've seen lots of businesses fail because of that. So it has to be something that you feel joy about. So yeah, 100.
Yeah, and same with
Yes.
jobs and positions and everything. I recently, actually, I'm still in the process of trying to get rid of one of my leadership positions that hasn't paid for any of my time in several years. And I have completed that cycle, but that person said, oh, I wish you could find a way to have enough bandwidth to do it. And he understood. He's not trying to pressure me. But at an earlier part of my career, I may have, because he said that, been like, ooh, maybe I can.
Right.
Maybe I can just do
Yeah.
the thing that he's asking
Yeah.
because he really wants me to.
Yeah.
But
And
now I
you
know
already have the
better.
language. You have the language. You said it already, that you have to tell people you don't have the bandwidth and you don't have capacity. Those are 2 things that I learned to say early on, because everybody wants me to be on boards, and I pick a few every year and I can't be on all of them, right? And
Yeah.
so I have a list, I have a running list, and hopefully I'm helpful in some capacity with some of them, and but to take it all on isn't going to benefit anyone. So
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I don't. I heard someone say that on a different podcast the other day. She doesn't say I can't, because people will automatically try to persuade you how you can.
yes,
And so
yeah,
If she says, I can't go to that meeting after 5 o'clock because I have to pick my kid up, someone will try to persuade her. But when she says, I don't do meetings after 5, I pick up my kids.
Yeah,
It's a little bit harder of a boundary to then argue with for
it
somebody.
is.
So I
Yeah.
really liked that she said that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to set boundaries around anything that you want to do. If you want to spend time, like I said, for exercise or fitness, your mental health, whatever it is, that it's so important that people understand that. And I feel like people are getting a little bit more respectful around it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think especially when you have a either an entire business focused on
Right.
things that are about your wellness, or for
Right.
me, I also have, a business and a wellness director title and all of these things that make people cued into the fact that this might be an important value in your life, and hopefully gives them permission to do it too. But they do tend to bother me a little bit less about it because I've made my whole career about that now.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's just a matter of redesigning it. I was afraid to. I had a job that I loved, and I was afraid because of money or whatever else, and it has been remarkable, like 10 times what I made before, right? So it's much better to let go of things when you're not 100% happy, and just redesign it. You can still do the things you love, but it doesn't have to be in the way that you're stuck in right now.
Yeah, as I listen to you say that, I'm curious, obviously pivoting your life can be challenging.
Mhm.
Do you use vision boarding or the tools that you teach to other people to do that for yourself?
Yeah, so there's this thing of when you hold space for other people, you don't have to do a lot. Once you've set it up and they're in their groove, I'm still holding space for them.
Hmm.
And so a lot of times I'll be helping people find images, and if we were working with magazines and not digitally, and awesome with it. So I'm looking through magazines, and things will pop up, and so I'll make sure
Mm.
to cut those out. So I always have a running vision board. Right now I have a pile of papers, and when I have enough, I'll recreate my vision board. So my visions are always changing and getting better, and I repurpose the board. So I take off things that I haven't achieved yet and remove them, move them over. Usually it's if it's a dream that I can't achieve myself, it's because someone else is a part of it, right? There's some other
Hmm.
person or thing or something that I need that, I need to get everybody aligned or on board before I can move it forward. So, but yes, so in fact, one of my clients said, you should just come and bring your hammock with you and hang out with us in your hammock, because I've worked with them a number of times and they know I'm good at holding space, but they said I could bring my hammock with me. So yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. So, as we sort of move
Yeah.
toward the end of our talk, I was wondering, there might be a woman out there who has tried vision boarding or journaling or manifesting, but nothing's really coming from it.
Mhm.
So I was wondering, in your experience, if you see that happening, what's actually happening for that person? Are they just doing the wrong technique, or is something else going on?
Yeah, so that if there's any technique, I would say these are the few. Make sure to put the most important thing in the middle of the board, and then cluster the other parts together so that it's not scattered. Because I think that it can sometimes manifest if you scatter things over. So if you want all wellness and travel and business and love or whatever it is, make sure to cluster those things together. A new career, more time on your own creativity, whatever it is, just cluster those things together. And then taking time to really feel into it, feel like what it would feel like to be already there, already in your life, right? I see when I do this, I have people meditate with me, and the smiles, right? When they have their eyes closed, you can just see them feeling into this dream. And so they can do it on their own. They can feel whatever it is they feel, and then taking action, those action steps to really get to where they want to go. I think that's another really important piece of this. So I guess that would be, and then have somebody hold you accountable for it and get out of that negative headspace. The minute you say, "Oh, this is not coming true," it's probably not going to come true. So constantly reshifting. Every time you hear yourself saying that, I've stopped using, this is a theater technique, right? You've probably heard before in improv where you say yes and instead of yes but.
Hmm.
And it makes a huge difference. I've stopped saying the word but. If catch myself, I try to shift it to yes and that makes a difference. So it's the language that we say around these things that helps people manifest faster.
Yeah, it's that getting back to that possibility again, and not cutting something off when you don't know or because it's scary, but just really giving it some room. I think that's one of the things that I'm not very good at is I like things to happen really quickly. And that's another way I've had to let go of what the process looks like is not
Yep.
only do I not know exactly what it will look like, I have no
Yes.
idea how long it will
Yeah.
take, and I'm not directly in control of that. And so, building my own business is felt like I declared that I wanted this thing 5 years ago, and I'm still just like a little bit farther. But
Yeah.
like you said, the part of me that can hold a business and hold space and do things is a different person. And I wouldn't be able to create the things I create now if I hadn't gone through that whole process. So, also
Yeah.
not to get down on ourselves because things are taking longer than we want
Yeah.
them to.
The bigger the dream, the longer it takes, right? The universe needs time to catch up with it. So definitely give it time and space. And you're right, not having control over how it's going to appear is really important. So yeah.
I love that. It's sort of a mic drop moment.
Yeah,
Where can people find you?
sure.
I'll link in the show notes to all the
Yeah.
places, but
Yeah, I'm everywhere probably. I'm on hammockwayoflife.com is my business name, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Hammock Way of Life. Jazzy Jan is my LinkedIn handle, or Janet Tanguay. You can find me there. And on Amazon, look up Janet Tanguay and you can find all the books. Yeah.
great. I love that. I'll also link the books in my show notes. That way people can find them easily.
Great. And Spotify too, Jazzy Jan, and Jaya Rael is where you can find the Smell the Rain song. Yeah.
Great. Well, I will link to that. I just want to say thank you for this conversation. I hope it is and I know it will be a great introduction to vision boarding and manifestation for this
Yeah.
audience.
Thanks for the opportunity. This is great. Yeah, I'm enjoying meeting more of your audience, so that's great. Thank you.